If you've ever used a website or an app that just felt incredibly fast and smooth, chances are you are using something built with React. So in the next few minutes, we're going to dive in and break down exactly what React is, how it works, and why it's become one of the most popular tools for developers out there. So have you ever wondered why some apps let you type, click, and scroll, and everything just updates instantly without that annoying whole-page reload? Well, it all comes down to a really clever solution for one of the biggest bottlenecks on the web. To really get why React is so powerful, we first have to understand the problem it was designed to solve. And that problem is something called the DOM. You see, every time something on a web page needs to change, the browser has to perform a very expensive operation. And I don't mean money, I mean it takes a ton of processing power, which can really slow things down.
So let's meet our so-called villain in this story, the real DOM. The best way to think about it is as the official, heavy-duty blueprint for a web page. Now, here's the catch. If you want to change just one tiny detail on that blueprint, the browser has to basically redraw a huge chunk of it. As you can imagine, that's slow, it's resource-intensive, and it's what creates that clunky, laggy user experience.
So if changing the official blueprint is way too slow, what's the alternative? Well, React's creators came up with a truly revolutionary idea. They thought, what if we just don't touch the real blueprint directly? Instead, they decided to first make any changes on a super lightweight virtual copy. And this is where the virtual DOM comes in. And here's where you can really see the difference. The real DOM is the actual heavy page structure. The virtual DOM, on the other hand, is a super fast copy that just lives in memory. So when something needs to change, React first updates this lightweight copy, calculates the absolute smallest possible update needed, and only then does it go and touch the slow, heavy, real DOM. This is a complete game changer for performance. This secret sauce, this whole process of comparing the virtual blueprints to find the bare minimum changes, actually has a name. It's called reconciliation. You can think of it as the core engine that makes React so incredibly fast and efficient. It really all boils down to this slick, three-step process. First, React does something called diffing. It just compares the old and new virtual copies to see what's different. Second, and this is really smart, instead of making 100 tiny updates, it batches them all together into one single efficient package. And finally, in the commit phase, it applies that one surgical update to the real DOM. This is exactly why React apps feel so snappy and responsive. Okay, so we know why React is so fast. We get the whole blueprint thing. But how do developers actually build with it? Well, the answer is actually really simple and elegant. You use reusable building blocks. You see, everything in React is built around this core idea of components. A component is really just a piece of your user interface. It could be a button, a search bar, a user profile, anything. They're like digital Lego bricks. You build these small, independent pieces once, and then you can just snap them together and reuse them everywhere to create your entire application. Now, to make building these little Lego bricks feel super intuitive, React uses a special syntax called JSX. What it does is let developers write something that looks almost exactly like HTML, but with the full power of JavaScript right there inside of it. And this right here shows you exactly why JSX is such a big deal. On the left, you've got the pure JavaScript way of creating things on a web page. It's kind of clunky, pretty hard to read. But on the right, using JSX, the code looks clean, familiar, almost exactly like HTML. This simplicity makes developing so much faster.
So we can build static interfaces with these components, which is awesome. But modern apps aren't static, right? They're dynamic. They need to remember things like what you've typed into a search box or whether a menu is open or closed. So how does React handle that?
This is where something called state comes into play. State is basically the memory of a component. It holds on to any information that can change over time. And here's the magic part. Whenever that state changes, React automatically re-renders the component, kicking off that super fast virtual DOM comparison to update the screen. And to manage this state, developers use a really cool feature called hooks. Think of hooks as special tools that give your simple components superpowers. They're basically just functions that React gives you, and they let you hook into core React features like state management, all without having to write a bunch of complicated code. The useState hook is by far the most common one. A developer uses it to give a component memory. In this example here, it's being used to remember if a user is online or offline. It gives you back two things, the current status and a special function to update that status. It's a really simple but incredibly powerful way to build interactive features.
Okay, so let's zoom out for a second. Learning React's core concepts, the virtual DOM, components, hooks, that's really just the first step. You're actually entering this massive world of powerful tools that the community has built around it. It's a huge ecosystem. And this ecosystem includes tools for pretty much every part of development. You've got package managers to organize your project, tools for bundling and optimizing your code to make it as fast as possible, and routers to handle navigation between different pages in your app. It's really a complete toolkit for building modern applications.
And you know, this quote really just hits the nail on the head. The name says it all. React was built from the ground up to react to data changes instantly, creating user interfaces that feel alive, responsive, and incredibly fast, all without those jarring full-page reloads we all used to hate. By solving that huge DOM performance problem with a brilliant virtual DOM strategy, and by giving developers this powerful reusable component model, React didn't just create another library, it set a completely new standard for how we think about and build interactive experiences on the web. And that's a change that continues to shape our digital world today.